The rain hammered my windshield like bullets as I pulled into our driveway 3 hours earlier than usual. My delivery truck had broken down again. Seems like everything in my life was falling apart these days. I should have been frustrated, but honestly, I was just tired. Tired of fixing other people's problems at my body shop while my own life crumbled around me. I'm Jake Morrison, 42 years old, and I've been running Morrison's Auto Body for 15 years. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills. Or it used to before my wife Sarah decided she needed to find herself by spending money we didn't have on yoga retreats and expensive wine. The house was dark, except for a faint glow from our bedroom window. Sarah's BMW sat in the driveway, which was odd. She usually worked late at the law firm, especially since making partner last month. I grabbed my toolbox from the truck and headed for the front door, my boots squelching in the muddy driveway. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Sarah's laughter, but different somehow. Lighter. Happier than I'd heard in years. I paused at the door, key halfway to the lock. Through the thin walls of our modest colonial, I could hear her voice, muffled but animated. She was on the phone talking in that breathy, excited way she used to talk to me back when we were dating. I know, she was saying, but you should see the way he looks at me. Like I'm the only woman in the world. My stomach dropped. I stood there in the rain, water dripping from my work jacket, listening to my wife of 18 years giggle like a teenager. This wasn't about work. This wasn't about her book club or her sister or any of the dozen other explanations I'd been giving myself for her recent behavior. I turned the key slowly, stepped inside, and closed the door with deliberate quiet. The house smelled different, expensive cologne mixed with something else, excitement maybe. The scent of secrets. Oh God, I have to go, Sarah whispered from upstairs. Jake's home. The way she said my name, like I was an inconvenience, an obstacle to be managed, hit me harder than any punch I'd ever taken in my boxing days. I climbed the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. Our bedroom door was cracked open, and I could see Sarah sitting on the edge of our bed, hastily shoving something under the mattress. Her hair was different, styled in a way I hadn't seen before. Her makeup was perfect, even though she'd supposedly been home all evening. Hey, honey, she said, turning to face me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You're early. Truck broke down. I gestured toward the window. Thought I'd come home and spend some time with my wife. Something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance. That's sweet, but I'm really tired. Long day at the office. I nodded, playing along. Must have been exhausting. All that laughing and giggling you were doing on the phone. Her smile faltered for just a second. Oh, that was just Jennifer. You know how she gets with her dating stories. Jennifer, her best friend and fellow lawyer. I'd known Jennifer for 10 years, and she'd never made Sarah laugh like that, not once. Right, I said. Well, I'm going to grab a beer. You get some rest. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, Sarah, you might want to check under the bed. I think you dropped something. Her face went white, but I was already walking away. That night, I lay awake listening to Sarah's breathing, waiting for her to fall asleep. When her breath finally evened out, I slipped from the bed and padded downstairs to my workshop in the garage. I needed to think, and I always thought better with my hands busy. But I couldn't focus on the carburetor I was rebuilding. My mind kept circling back to that phone call, to the way Sarah had looked, guilty and radiant at the same time. After an hour of accomplishing nothing, I gave up and went back inside. I was passing through the living room when I noticed Sarah's purse on the coffee table. She usually kept it in the bedroom, locked away like it contained state secrets. Tonight, it sat open, her phone visible on top. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that. But 18 years of marriage had earned me some rights, hadn't it? Her phone was password protected, but I knew Sarah. She used the same password for everything, our wedding anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me as I typed in the numbers. The text messages hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear the red dress. You're all I think about. Your husband doesn't deserve you. The contact name was Gym Guy, but there was a photo attached to the conversation. A muscled torso in a tight t-shirt. The kind of physique that came from years of dedicated workouts and probably steroids. Everything I wasn't. I scrolled through weeks of messages, each one a knife twist. Plans for secret meetings, discussions of hotel rooms, promises of a future together once Sarah figured out how to handle Jake. My hands were shaking as I scrolled to the photos. Sarah in lingerie I'd never seen before. Sarah in poses I'd never seen before. Sarah looking at the camera with an expression of pure desire that she hadn't shown me in years. The last message was from earlier tonight. Tomorrow after school, same place. I'll bring the wine. After school. This guy worked at a school. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and went back to the garage. This time I didn't even pretend to work. I just sat in my father's old chair and stared at the wall, trying to process what I'd learned. My wife was having an affair with some muscle-bound teacher or coach. She was planning to leave me. And based on those messages, half the town probably knew about it already. I'd always been the underdog. In high school, I was the mechanic's son while Sarah was the lawyer's daughter. In our marriage, I was the blue-collar guy who got lucky enough to marry up. In this town, I was just Jake Morrison, the guy who fixed cars and minded his own business. But here's the thing about underdogs. We're used to fighting from behind. We're used to taking hits and getting back up. And sometimes when people underestimate us long enough, we surprise them. I spent the rest of the night planning. The next morning, Sarah was all sunshine and coffee kisses, like nothing had happened. She wore a red dress, the one gym guy had requested, and spent an extra 20 minutes on her makeup. I might be late tonight, she said, not meeting my eyes. Big case coming up. Sure thing, honey. I'll probably work late too. Got a rush job on a Mustang. She seemed relieved. Okay, well, have a good day. After she left, I called my best friend Tommy Ricci, who owned Ricci's Tavern down on Main Street. Tommy had been my drinking buddy since high school, and he knew everyone in town. Tommy, it's Jake. I need a favor. Name it. What do you know about the PE teachers at the high school? Tommy laughed. Why? You thinking of switching careers? Because let me tell you, your knees ain't built for coaching anymore. Just curious. Sarah mentioned something about the school board, and you know how she gets about local politics. Well, there's old Mr. Peterson, but he's about 70 and married to his wife of 40 years. Then there's the new guy, Brad Kowalski. Came in last year from Boston. Big guy, all muscles and charm. The ladies love him, if you know what I mean. My stomach clenched. Kowalski, huh? Yeah, coaches football and wrestling. Lives in that new apartment complex over on Elm Street. Drives a red Camaro like he thinks he's still 25. Why? No reason, just making conversation. Jake, you sound weird. Everything okay? Everything's fine, Tommy. I'll talk to you later. I hung up and sat in my office, staring at the wall calendar. Brad Kowalski. The name fit the muscles in those photos. And if he was meeting Sarah after school, that meant they were probably at the high school gym. It was isolated, private, and he'd have keys. I spent the day going through the motions at the shop, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about those text messages, about the way Sarah had looked in those photos. 18 years of marriage, and she'd never looked at me like that. By 4 o'clock, I couldn't stand it anymore. I told my employee Danny I was heading out early and drove toward the high school. The parking lot was mostly empty. Just a few cars belonging to teachers finishing up their day. Sarah's BMW was parked near the gym entrance. I parked across the street behind a delivery truck and waited. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray and threatening. Perfect weather for catching cheating wives. At 5:30, the gym door opened. Sarah emerged first, looking around nervously before walking quickly toward her car. A minute later, a man followed. Even from a distance, I could see he was everything I wasn't. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of confident swagger that came from never having to worry about anything. Brad Kowalski had to be. He walked over to Sarah's car, and they talked for a few minutes through her open window. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told the story. His hand on her arm, her looking up at him with that same expression from the photos. Then he leaned down and kissed her, right there in the school parking lot where anyone could see. I took out my phone and started recording. They broke apart after what felt like an eternity. Sarah drove away first, and Kowalski walked to his red Camaro. Just like Tommy had said. I followed him at a distance as he drove through town to the apartment complex on Elm Street. He lived in Building C, second floor. I watched him climb the stairs and disappear into Unit 2B. That night, Sarah was distant and distracted. She picked at her dinner and kept checking her phone. Everything okay? I asked. Just work stuff. And this case is really stressing me out. Want to talk about it? You wouldn't understand. It's complicated legal stuff. Right. Too complicated for the dumb mechanic to comprehend. After dinner, she went upstairs to work on some briefs, but I could hear her on the phone again. That same breathy laughter from the night before. I went to my workshop and started planning phase two. The thing about being a mechanic is that you learn how things work. Cars, trucks, motorcycles, they all have systems. And if you understand the systems, you can fix them or break them. People have systems too: routines, habits, weaknesses. And if you pay attention long enough, you can figure out how to exploit them. Sarah and her boyfriend had a routine now: Tuesday and Thursday evenings at the gym. Probably other times too, but those were the ones I could document. I spent the next week gathering evidence: photos of them together, video of them kissing, screenshots of their text messages when Sarah left her phone unattended. I was building a case just like Sarah would do for one of her clients. But evidence wasn't enough. I wanted more than just proof of their affair. I wanted consequences. The opportunity came the following Thursday. Sarah left for her late night at the office, and I drove to the high school. This time, instead of staying in my truck, I walked around the building. The gym had windows near the back, and if I was careful, I could get close enough to see inside. What I saw made my blood boil. They'd set up a little love nest in the coach's office: candles, wine, a blanket spread on the floor. Sarah was wearing lingerie I'd never seen before, probably bought with money from our joint account. I watched for a few minutes, documenting everything with my phone's camera. Then I had an idea. Kowalski's Camaro was parked in its usual spot near the gym entrance. The thing about sports cars is that they're not built for practicality. They're built for show, and showing off requires a functioning engine. I popped the hood and went to work. Nothing permanent, nothing that would cause an accident. Just a little adjustment to the fuel line that would cause the engine not to stall out at the worst possible moment. Then I went home and waited. Sarah returned around 11, flushed and happy in a way that made me sick. She went straight to the shower without saying a word to me. The next morning, I got the call I'd been expecting. "Jake, it's Tommy. You hear about the excitement at the high school last night?" "What excitement?" "That coach, Kowalski. His car broke down in the parking lot around 10:30. Had to call for a tow truck. But here's the funny part. Martha Henderson was driving by and saw him arguing with some woman in a red dress. Couldn't see who it was, but Martha thinks it might have been someone's wife." Martha Henderson was the biggest gossip in town. By noon, half the population would know that the new PE coach was fooling around with a married woman. "That's interesting," I said. "Any idea who the woman was?" "Nah, but you know Martha. She'll figure it out eventually. That woman's like a bloodhound when it comes to other people's business." I hung up feeling satisfied. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Sarah and her boyfriend's little secret was starting to leak out. But I was just getting warmed up. The gossip mill in our town worked faster than the internet. By Friday afternoon, 3 different customers at my shop had mentioned the mystery woman in red who'd been seen with Coach Kowalski. None of them suspected Sarah yet, but I could see the wheels turning. Sarah seemed nervous all weekend. She kept checking her phone and jumping every time it rang. When her friend Jennifer called on Saturday, Sarah took the phone into the bathroom and spoke in hushed tones for 20 minutes. "Everything okay?" I asked when she came out. "Fine, just girl talk." But her hands were shaking as she poured herself a glass of wine. It wasn't even noon. I decided it was time to turn up the heat. Monday morning, I drove to the high school and parked in the visitor lot. I walked into the main office like I belonged there, carrying a clipboard and wearing my cleanest work shirt. "Morning," I said to the secretary, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Chen. "I'm here to check on the heating system in the gym. Got a report of some problems." Mrs. Chen looked confused. "I don't have any work orders for the gym. Probably got lost in the shuffle. Happens all the time. Mind if I take a quick look? Won't take more than 10 minutes. She hesitated, then shrugged. "I guess it's okay. Coach Kowalski should be there, setting up for first period." Perfect. I found Kowalski in the gym, arranging equipment for what looked like a wrestling class. Up close, he was even more impressive. 6'3", probably 220, with the kind of physique that came from years of serious training. "Help you?" he asked, looking up from a stack of wrestling mats. "Jake Morrison," I said, extending my hand. "I'm here about the heating system." He shook my hand, and I felt the strength in his grip. This was a man used to physical confrontation, used to winning. Didn't know he had any problems with the heat. Probably nothing major. Just need to check a few things. I walked around the gym, pretending to examine vents and thermostats while really studying the layout. The coach's office was in the back corner, just like I'd seen through the window. Private, isolated to perfect for secret meetings. You're new here, right? I asked, making conversation. Started last year, came up from Boston. Like the town so far? He smiled, and I could see why Sarah was attracted to him. The guy had charm to go with the muscles. It's growing on me. Small towns have their advantages. People are friendlier. The way he said friendlier made me want to punch him in the face. Instead, I smiled back. Yeah, we're a tight-knit community. Everyone knows everyone else's business. Can be good or bad, depending on your perspective. Something flickered in his eyes. What do you mean? Oh, just that it's hard to keep secrets around here. Word travels fast. I let that hang in the air for a moment, then continued my fake inspection. Well, everything looks good, I said finally. No problems I can see. But if you notice anything unusual, strange noises, unexpected visitors, that kind of thing, give us a call. He nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. The seed of doubt was planted. That afternoon, I called Sarah at her office. Hey, honey, I was thinking we should have dinner at Ricci's tonight. We haven't been out in weeks. I can't. I have to work late again. Another big case? The same one. It's really complicated. Well, maybe tomorrow then, or this weekend. Maybe. We'll see. I hung up and smiled. Sarah would be at the gym tonight, and thanks to my little chat with Kowalski, he'd be paranoid about being watched. Perfect conditions for what I had planned. At 7 o'clock, I drove to the high school and parked in a different spot this time, behind the maintenance building where I couldn't be seen from the gym. I'd brought some tools from the shop, nothing illegal, just standard equipment for a working mechanic. Sarah's BMW was already in the parking lot, along with Kowalski's Camaro. They were getting bolder, or maybe just more desperate. I waited until I was sure they were inside, then went to work on both cars. Nothing dangerous, nothing that would hurt anyone. Just some creative mechanical adjustments that would cause maximum embarrassment at minimum risk. For Sarah's BMW, I loosened the connection on her car alarm. Not enough to disable it completely, but enough to make it hypersensitive. A strong breeze would set it off. For Kowalski's Camaro, I was more creative. I disconnected the battery cable and hid it under the hood, then used some fishing line to rig the horn to the door handle. When he tried to get in his car, he'd get a surprise. Then I settled in to wait. Around 9:30, the gym door opened and Sarah emerged, looking around nervously. The paranoia was setting in, just like I'd hoped. She walked to her car and fumbled with her keys. The moment she touched the door handle, the alarm exploded to life, echoing across the empty parking lot like an air raid siren. Sarah jumped back startled, then frantically tried to shut off the alarm. It took her almost 2 minutes to get it stopped, and by then lights were coming on in houses across the street. Kowalski came running out of the gym, probably thinking someone was trying to break into her car. He was shirtless, carrying his clothes in his hands. What happened? He shouted over the noise. I don't know. The alarm just went off. They both looked around frantically, clearly worried about being seen together. Sarah finally got the alarm turned off, and an uncomfortable silence fell over the parking lot. Maybe we should, Kowalski started to say, but he was interrupted by his own car horn blaring as he tried to open his door. The horn wouldn't stop. Every time he touched the handle, it blared again. He tried his key, tried the passenger side, tried everything he could think of, but the horn kept going off. By now, porch lights were coming on all over the neighborhood. Someone would call the police soon if this kept up. Just leave it, Sarah hissed. Get in my car. Kowalski threw his clothes into Sarah's BMW and jumped into the passenger seat. Sarah gunned the engine and peeled out of the parking lot like she was fleeing a crime scene, which in a way she was. I waited until they were gone, then walked over to Kowalski's Camaro and fixed the horn problem. No point in letting the poor car suffer all night. The next morning, Tommy called with the latest gossip. Jake, you're not going to believe this. Last night around 9:30, car alarms were going off all over the place. Near the high school, woke up half the neighborhood. Really? That's weird. Yeah, and get this. Mrs. Patterson saw a BMW speeding away from the school with 2 people in it. She thinks it might have been connected to all the noise. Mrs. Patterson lived across the street from the school and was almost as big a gossip as Martha Henderson. Any idea whose BMW it was? Nah, but you know how these things go. Someone will figure it out eventually. I was counting on it. That evening, Sarah was a wreck. She snapped at me over dinner, spilled wine on her blouse, and kept checking her phone every 5 minutes. Bad day at work? I asked innocently. You could say that. Want to talk about it? No, I just want to go to bed. She went upstairs early, and I heard her on the phone again. But this time the conversation sounded tense. Lots of hushed arguments and frustrated sighs. The pressure was building. Soon, something would have to give. I was looking forward to finding out what. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. Wednesday evening, Sarah announced she was going to Jennifer's house to work on a case. It was a new lie. She'd never used Jennifer's cover before, which told me she was getting desperate. Give Jennifer my best, I said. I will. But instead of heading toward Jennifer's neighborhood, Sarah drove straight to the apartment complex on Elm Street. She was abandoning the gym meetings, probably because they felt too exposed now. I followed at a distance and watched her park outside Building C. She sat in her car for several minutes, looking around nervously before finally getting out and climbing the stairs to Unit 2B. This was different, more intimate, more dangerous for both of them. I parked across the street and settled in to wait. This time, I wasn't planning any mechanical sabotage. This time, I wanted witnesses. At 9 o'clock, I called the apartment complex's management office. I'd looked up the number earlier. Hi, this is Detective Morrison with the police department, I said, deepening my voice and trying to sound official. We've had reports of suspicious activity in Building C, possible illegal substance dealing. Can you send someone to check it out? It was a long shot, but small-town apartment managers tend to be jumpy about anything that might bring bad publicity. Illegal substance dealing? Are you sure? We've had multiple reports, someone in Unit 2B. Could you send a manager over to take a look? We don't want to make a big scene unless we have to. I'll send someone right over. 20 minutes later, a nervous-looking man in a maintenance uniform showed up and started walking around Building C, peering into windows and checking doors. He eventually made his way to the second floor and knocked on Unit 2B. I couldn't hear the conversation from across the street, but I could see the maintenance man talking to someone through the cracked door. After a few minutes, he left, but not before writing something down on his clipboard. Sarah's car was still in the parking lot. The next morning, I called Tommy again. Hey, you know anyone who works at those new apartments on Elm Street? My cousin Vinny does maintenance there. Why? Just curious. Sarah's thinking about maybe getting a place closer to her office. It was a weak excuse, but Tommy didn't question it. Want me to ask him about availability? Sure, if it's no trouble. An hour later, Tommy called back. Talked to Vinny. Funny thing, he was over there last night checking on some illegal substance complaint that turned out to be nothing. But he said the guy in 2B was acting real nervous, and there was definitely a woman in there. Vinny thinks it was someone's wife based on the way they were both acting. Interesting. Yeah, Vinny's got a nose for that kind of drama. He says the guy's name is Kowalski, works at the high school. Ring any bells? I pretended to think about it. Maybe. Sarah mentioned something about the school board hiring new teachers. Well, if your wife's looking for an apartment, she might want to avoid that building. Vinny says it's getting a reputation for that kind of thing. Perfect. The gossip network was doing exactly what I'd hoped it would do. That evening, Sarah was even more agitated than before. She kept pacing around the house, checking her phone and pouring herself glasses of wine that she barely touched. Sarah, you're making me nervous. What's going on? Nothing. I'm just stressed about work. This case must really be something. You've been working on it for weeks. She froze, wine glass halfway to her lips. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that it's taking longer than usual. These things are complicated, Jake. You wouldn't understand. There it was again. The casual dismissal, the assumption that I was too stupid to comprehend her sophisticated legal work. Try me, I said. Maybe I'm smarter than you think. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. How much did I know? How much did I suspect? It's a corporate merger, she said finally. Lots of moving parts. Sounds complicated. Must require a lot of evening meetings. Sometimes. And weekend work? Occasionally. I nodded like I believed her. Well, I hope it wraps up soon. I miss spending time with my wife. Something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or regret. For just a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married 18 years ago. Then her phone buzzed, and the moment was gone. She read the text message, and her face went white. I have to go out, she said. Now it's almost 10 o'clock. It's important. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I watched through the window as she sat in her car for several minutes, talking frantically on the phone. Whatever was happening, it was big. I gave her a 5-minute head start, then followed. But instead of heading toward the apartment complex or the high school, She drove to Ricci's Tavern. That was unexpected. I parked down the street and watched as Sarah hurried inside. Through the windows, I could see her talking to Jennifer, who was sitting alone at a corner table. This wasn't a romantic meeting. This was a crisis conference. I waited 15 minutes, then walked into the bar like I was just stopping by for a beer. Jake, Tommy called out from behind the bar. What brings you out on a school night? Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd have a drink and see who was around. I ordered a beer and casually looked around the bar. Sarah and Jennifer were huddled together in the corner, speaking in urgent whispers. Sarah looked like she was about to cry. Everything okay over there? I asked Tommy quietly. He glanced toward their table. Your wife and her friend came in about 20 minutes ago. Looked pretty upset about something. Probably work stuff. You know how lawyers get. But as I watched, I could see this was about more than work. Jennifer was leaning forward, talking intently, while Sarah shook her head and dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Then Jennifer looked up and saw me at the bar. She said something to Sarah, who turned around and spotted me. The look on her face was pure panic. I raised my beer in a casual greeting and smiled. Sarah whispered something to Jennifer, then got up and walked over to me. Jake, what are you doing here? Having a beer. What are you doing here? I thought you had to work. I finished early. Jennifer called and asked me to meet her. She's having problems with her boyfriend. It was a reasonable lie, but her voice was shaking. Want me to leave you two alone? No, it's okay. We were just finishing up. She went back to the table, said something to Jennifer, and they both left quickly. I finished my beer and went home, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The dynamic was shifting, and I wasn't sure what it meant. I was about to find out. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. It was Tommy. Jake, you need to get down here right now. What's wrong? Just get down here. And Jake, you might want to bring a lawyer. I drove to Ricci's Tavern with my stomach in knots, trying to imagine what could be so urgent that Tommy would call at 7 in the morning. The bar was closed, but Tommy was waiting for me at the back door. His face was grim. What's going on? I asked. Come inside. We need to talk. He led me to a table in the back corner, the same table where Sarah and Jennifer had been sitting the night before. Jake, I've known you for 25 years, so I'm going to give this to you straight. Jennifer came back here after you left last night. She was drunk and upset, and she said some things. My mouth went dry. What kind of things? She told me about Sarah and the coach, the whole thing. She's been covering for Sarah, lying to you, helping them meet up. But she's also been in love with Sarah for years, and she's jealous as hell about this guy. I sat down heavily. She told you all this? She was falling down drunk and crying her eyes out. She said she couldn't take it anymore, watching Sarah throw away her marriage for some muscle-bound idiot. She said you deserve to know the truth. I stared at the table, processing this information. So now what? Now Jennifer sobered up and realized what she did. She called me an hour ago, begging me not to tell you, but Jake, I can't keep this from you. You're my best friend. I appreciate that, Tommy. I really do. There's more. I looked up at him. More? Jennifer thinks Sarah's planning to leave you soon. She's been moving money around, talking to divorce lawyers. This thing with the coach isn't just an affair. It's an exit strategy. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd known about the affair, but hadn't considered that Sarah might be planning to end our marriage. How soon? Jennifer thinks within the next few weeks. Sarah's just waiting for the right moment. I sat in silence for several minutes, trying to process everything. Finally, I looked up at Tommy. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Shoot, how long have people known about the affair? Tommy shifted uncomfortably. Jake, how long, Tommy? There have been rumors for a couple months. Nothing concrete, just talk. But after the thing with the car alarms at the school, people started putting pieces together. So half the town knows my wife is cheating on me. Not half. But some people have suspicions. I laughed bitterly. Great. So I'm not just losing my wife, I'm becoming the town joke. That's not true, isn't it? Poor Jake Morrison, the mechanic who couldn't keep his lawyer wife happy. She traded up for a younger model with bigger muscles. Jake, stop. But I was on a roll now, 18 years of resentment pouring out. You know what the worst part is? I've been playing along, pretending I don't know, pretending everything's fine while she's been laughing at me behind my back. So what are you going to do? I looked at Tommy, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt a sense of clarity. I'm going to stop being the sufferer. That afternoon, I drove to the high school. It was Friday, which meant Kowalski would be coaching football practice. I wanted to see him in his element, surrounded by his admirers. I found him on the practice field, putting a group of teenage boys through drills. He was in his element, shouting instructions, demonstrating techniques, basking in the respect of his players. I stood on the sidelines and watched for a while. This was what Sarah saw in him. Not just the muscles, but the confidence, the authority, the way everyone looked up to him. Everything I wasn't. When practice ended, I approached him. Coach Kowalski, Jake Morrison, we met the other day. He looked puzzled for a moment, then remembered. Right, the heating guy. What can I do for you? I wanted to follow up on our conversation. You mentioned that people in small towns can be friendly. Yeah? Well, I've been hearing some interesting stories around town about you. His expression hardened. What kind of stories? The kind that involve married women and car alarms going off in parking lots. For a moment, I thought he might take a swing at me. His hands clenched into fists, and I could see the muscles in his jaw working. But we were surrounded by his players, and he was smart enough not to lose control in front of them. I don't know what you're talking about, he said finally. Sure you do. Sarah Morrison. Ring any bells? The color drained from his face. That's my wife, by the way, in case you were wondering. He looked around frantically, making sure none of the players could hear us. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Too late for that. You've been sleeping with my wife for months. In my book, that's already trouble. It's not what you think. I laughed. Really? Because I think you've been meeting my wife at the gym twice a week, and more recently at your apartment. I think you've been sending her text messages about how her husband doesn't deserve her. I think you've been planning a future together. Am I wrong about any of that? He didn't answer. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You are going to end this thing with Sarah. Tonight. You're going to tell her it's over, and you're going to stay away from her. And if I don't, then everyone in this town is going to know exactly what kind of man their children's coach really is. The school board, the parents, the local newspaper, everyone. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos I'd taken of him and Sarah kissing in the parking lot. Can't I? His face went white. Like I said, this is a small town. People talk. And once they start talking about you, your career here is over. I put my phone away and started to walk off, then turned back. Oh, and Brad, if you try to warn Sarah about this conversation, I'll make sure those photos end up on the front page of the local paper. Understood? He nodded mutely. I drove home feeling better than I had in weeks. For the first time since this whole thing started, I was in control. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, Sarah came home early, which was unusual. She seemed agitated, checking her phone constantly and jumping at every sound. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, just tired. Around 8 o'clock, her phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and her face went pale. I need to take this, she said, heading toward the stairs. Take it here, I don't mind. It's work stuff. Boring legal talk. But I could see the panic in her eyes as she hurried upstairs. I waited a few minutes, then quietly climbed the stairs and listened outside our bedroom door. What do you mean we need to talk? Sarah was saying. We talked yesterday. What? Who said what to you? There was a long pause. Jake? What does Jake have to do with anything? Another pause, longer this time. Oh God, no. How could he know? I smiled and headed back downstairs. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time for the finale. Sarah came downstairs 20 minutes later, looking like she'd seen a ghost. I have to go out, she said. Again, it's getting late. It's important. More important than spending time with your husband? She stared at me, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. How much did I know? How long had I known it? I'll be back soon, she said finally. Take your time. I'll be here when you get back. I always am. She left, and I settled in to wait for the final act of this drama to play out. It was going to be a long night, but it was going to be worth it. 2 hours later, Sarah returned home in tears. She'd obviously been crying for a while. Her makeup was ruined, her eyes were red and swollen, and her hands were shaking. She found me in the living room, reading a book and sipping a beer. Jake, we need to talk. Sure, what's on your mind? She sat down across from me, took a deep breath, and said the words I'd been waiting to hear. I've been having an affair. I looked up from my book and nodded. I know. The simple acknowledgement hit her like a slap. She'd probably been rehearsing this confession for hours, preparing for anger, for shouting, for drama. She wasn't prepared for calm acceptance. You know, I've known for weeks, Sarah. The question is, what are you going to do about it? She started crying again. It's over. He ended it tonight. He said he couldn't do this anymore. Smart man. Jake, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I closed my book and looked at her. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. Yes, you did. You meant for all of it to happen. The affair, the lies, the humiliation. You just didn't mean to get caught. That's not true. Isn't it? You've been planning to leave me, Sarah. You've been moving money around, talking to divorce lawyers. This wasn't just an affair. It was a trial run for your new life. Her face went white. How do you know about that too? 'Cause I'm not as stupid as you think I am. I never was. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet street. For 18 years, I've been the underdog in this marriage. The blue-collar guy who married up. The simple mechanic who couldn't possibly understand your sophisticated world. I turned back to face her. But here's the thing about underdogs, Sarah. We're survivors. We're scrappy. And we don't go down without a fight. What do you want from me? I want you to pack your bags and get out of my house. Jake, please. Can't we work this out? Work what out? The fact that you've been cheating on me for months? The fact that you were planning to leave me anyway? The fact that half the town knows about your affair? She looked stunned. Half the town? Small towns, Sarah. People talk. And thanks to your little performance with the car alarms, everyone's talking about you. I walked over to her and knelt down so we were eye to eye. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your things and leave. Tonight, you can stay with Jennifer, or find a hotel, or sleep in your car. I don't care. This is my house, too. Actually, it's not. It's in my name, bought with money I earned before we got married. Check the deed if you don't believe me. Her face crumpled. Jake, please, I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we can fix this. No, we can't, because this wasn't a mistake, Sarah. This was a choice. You chose him over me. You chose to lie to me, to humiliate me, to plan a future without me. I stood up and walked to the front door, opening it wide. Now choose to leave with some dignity, or I'll help you make that choice. She sat there for a long moment, crying and shaking. Then, slowly, she got up and walked upstairs. 30 minutes later, she came back down with 2 suitcases and her laptop bag. I'll come back for the rest of my things later. Call first. I don't want any surprises. She paused at the door. Jake, I really am sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. She left without another word. I closed the door behind her and walked back to my chair. I picked up my book, opened it to where I'd left off, and continued reading. For the first time in months, the house was quiet. For the first time in years, I was at peace. The underdog had won. The end.